And joining me now to discuss all of this, Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah. He's the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Thanks so much for being here with us, Congressman Chaffetz. As I said, a lot to discuss. I do want to ask you about the Iran negotiations. But first, we saw today the president make a rare appearance from the Pentagon. He said that this fight against ISIS will not be quick, but he did not mention a war authorization from Congress. Congressman, if this is going to be a long fight, in your view, does the president need to get that authorization?
Well, he should, and he should make the case to the American people. I sense more resolve from him, a more realistic view, but I'm concerned that he doesn't have a strategy. He talked about some topics, or some tactics, but in a topical way. But I didn't sense that he had a rock-solid strategy on how to deal with this and defeat it, not just in Iraq, but across the globe.
So what changes do you think would need to be made then if you don't think that he had a strategy that he laid out today?
Well, he is getting a sense of the severity of the problem. It bothered us a year ago and even a few months ago that I don't think he understood the gravity of the situation. I think he's starting to do that. That's just my impression from seeing him and listening to him. But look, the United States military can do anything. They can accomplish anything we set them to do. But if the more handcuffs we put behind their back, the more tethered they are to doing it a certain way, then they won't be able to get the job done. But it's not just Iraq. I really do worry about North Africa, Libya. I worry about those areas because we don't have the type of intelligence that we should and that we have had in the past. And we got to make sure that we're taking that fight, not just in Mosul and other places where we should have never lost control, but we have got to make sure that we've got the fight going on in Syria and Iraq and Libya and other places to make sure that they're held back and that they're defeated.
What's taking so long in your view with this fight?
Well, the president hasn't had a sense of urgency. I mean, the fact that he was at the Pentagon talking about this is a good sign. I'll say thank you, Mr. President, for doing that. But let's unleash the United States military to defeat this enemy in its totality. And thus far, I have not heard that resolve, and the president is starting to get there. I think the American people would be behind him if he would talk about it more often and explain the threat to the homeland of the United States of America. I do believe it is a clear and present danger, but we got to unleash our military to get the job done, and they will get it done.
As he said, the fight against ISIS will not be quick. Moving on to another big story we're following today, the ongoing negotiations with Iran for a nuclear deal. Our Jim Sciutto reported that the Iranians are saying that there is no agreed-upon deadline for a deal. What would you need to be included in a deal in order for you to support it, Congressman?
Well, if they can't even agree that there's a deadline, and if the United States it looks at Thursday as just a suggestion, then there really isn't a deadline. I want it to be crystal clear. The Iran should not get a nuclear capability. If they want to come in to the real world, to the developed world, they cannot develop a nuclear capability. Iran with a nuclear bomb is one of the biggest threats to the history of this planet, and we can't let it happen. And there are a series of other things and points that I think the president should insist upon, but I got to tell you, these concessions that I hear that the president is considering is just not going to fly. It's a non-starter, at least for this representative in the vote that I get.
All right, Congressman Chaffetz, I have a lot more I want to ask you, particularly about the Secret Service, something I know that you have a lot of opinions about. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with more of our interview. House Oversight Chairman Congressman Jason Chaffetz. But first, after a series of blunders and security lapses, including a fence jumper who made it inside the White House residence, the Secret Service has a new boss who is on a mission to fix the agency. CNN senior White House correspondent Jim Acosta got a behind-the-scenes look. Jim, how was it?
Pam, the Secret Service invited us out to their training facility here in Maryland, outside the nation's capital, in part to reassure the public the agency has what it takes to protect the president. And as the agency's director told us, there is no room for error with the influx of threats coming in. It's supposed to be one of the most elite law enforcement agencies in the world, from the K-9 squads guarding the White House to armed agents protecting the president from a potential ambush. The Secret Service conducts year-round training for all possible threats.
Everybody out right now.
But lately, the agency itself has been in the line of fire for allowing a fence-jumping intruder inside the White House last fall. a lowlight in a barrage of embarrassing headlines.
What is your short answer to that?
Well, it should not have happened, and it won't happen again. Again, we're training.
That'll never happen again.
That won't happen again.
Secret Service Director Joe Clancy was tapped to fix the troubled agency. A longtime agent who came out of retirement, Clancy is an insider in a job many in Congress say only an outsider can do.
I do think it helps to have some kind of a baseline education in what this job, and it's a difficult job. Every day is a challenge, I'm going to be honest with you.
Is it a cultural problem that you're dealing with now?
I don't think it's a cultural problem. I think that we certainly have an element that has had some difficulties in the past, but we've honestly moved on from that. We've learned from our mistakes.
Clancy is rebuilding the agency from the ground up, dramatically boosting the number of recruits. During this evasive driving drill, we're traveling at the speeds of 80 miles per hour. The purpose, they say, is not just to protect the integrity of the vehicle, but also the occupants. But Clancy knows the Secret Service also has to be prepared for more modern threats, whether it's ISIS.
Is it something that you're training for?
Yes, absolutely. We're training towards that, but also we're training towards the lone wolf.
Or a drone flying over the White House fence.
Can the White House, can the Secret Service stop a drone from flying over the White House?
I'm not going to get into specifics here, but we have included some new technology there.
But catching up takes time. To thwart jumpers, the Secret Service installed spikes along the White House fence just last week, more than 9 months after last fall's incident.
We're hoping it'll give us some time to react, a little more time. And
it's not going to stop every jumper.
It won't stop every jumper.
And Clancy wants a taller fence.
Almost anybody could jump that fence.
Yes.
Do you feel the same way?
I do.
But after a career inside the presidential bubble, the director understands restoring the public's trust must come first.
We've got to be better. Every day is a new day, and we've got to be prepared.
Now, later this year, the Secret Service says it will face one of its biggest challenges in years. That's when Pope Francis comes to the U.S. to meet with President Obama, just as the president will be traveling up to the United Nations to address diplomats from around the world there. The Secret Service, they want more money to build a mock White House here on the grounds of this training facility. They still have to wait for Congress to address that request. Pam?
All right, Jim Cheeto, thank you so much. Jim Acosta, rather. And we are back with Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah, chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. So we just heard this interview with the new director of the Secret Service. In your view, hearing what you heard from him, seeing the kind of training that happens with the Secret Service, do you believe that the president, that the White House are safe?
Well, I hope so. The more I looked under the hood, the more worried I got about it. The thing that the director said that concerns me is he doesn't believe that there's a deep-seated cultural problem, because there is a deep-seated cultural problem. That's what's led to a lot of these issues. And I think as Elijah Cummings, my Democratic counterpart, and I have looked at this, I think we would agree that there is a cultural problem that needs to be addressed. And the training, it looks great on television, but as we uncovered in the Oversight Committee, the average training time over the course of a year for both agents and officers, if you average it out, is 25 minutes.
So you talk about
25 minutes. I mean,
okay, so you talk about this cultural problem. So training is one thing, but you're saying the bigger problem is not a lack of training, but rather this culture problem. How do you change that? What would you do to change that?
That's where I believe they need to, across the board, and their senior management really needed to change that out. I disagreed with the president's choice, but I think Mr. Clancy is a good person. He's got a good heart. He's got a host of experience. I wholeheartedly support him. I want and need him to be successful at every step of the way. But that's not my role as the chairman of the Oversight Committee to just pat him on the back. It's to hold him accountable. The fact that they don't have a mock White House, something he's asking for now that they hadn't asked for in the past, I support it. It costs something like $8 million to do it, but that's a lot better than drawing literally spray paint on a ball field and pretending that they knew how the White House worked. I mean, we had agents and officers, not agents, but officers who had never been in the White House before, and yet they were guarding the White House, and yet we had a guy in Crocs hop the fence and get in the White House. So there are a lot of fundamental challenges there. There are concentric circles that are supposed to work to prevent these types of things, and they all failed. That's why I think they have a more systemic problem and challenge.
So you're talking about the systemic problem, the culture problem, but in all fairness, the director, Joe Clancy's only been on the job for, what, 6 months or so? I mean, don't we need to give him a little bit more time to do the job?
Well, hey, like I said, I want them and need them to be successful in a no-fail mission, but they have not necessarily made the systemic changes to the senior leadership. They put out press releases, said that they dismissed and let some people go, but it ends up, we found out later that they didn't actually let them go. So I want to see some changes. They did bring one person that specifically from the outside, but they have got to boost up the training. They have got to be able to deal with management problems and issues. You got to be able to hold people accountable. They have a financial audit system that doesn't work. You got agents and officers that don't know if they're going to work the next day, excessive overtime, and I could go on for an hour. He's got his hands full.
And he did talk about a security vulnerability that exists right now at the White House in his view. He says he thinks the White House needs a taller fence. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think the spikes are really going to slow them down, and I've had a number of briefings. Those of us on Capitol have had a number of briefings. There are other things you can do to slow people down. I don't know that necessarily adding a few more inches or a foot or two is actually going to totally solve that problem. Many of the people that got over the fence were actually on the watch list and probably should have been detained before they even got to the fence. So there are other things you can do. The canine teams need to be increased. But I don't know that necessarily making the fence taller will be the end-all, be-all, solve-it problem or solution that they need. So
what else would be the solution? I mean, we know that the drones pose a significant security threat to the White House. Do you think we should be doing more in terms of that? We heard Clancy say that there's new technology. He didn't say more than that. But do you think enough is being done on that front?
I think they're trying, and it's a concerted effort. There are some technologies in place. It is surprisingly good that I think can take care of this threat if it does arise again. But they need more training. They need more manpower. They need a mock White House so they can do better training. They have a severe staffing problem. You can't just go grab some guy who applied through somebody on a pizza box. But we've got to make sure that we've got the elite, the best of the best, that are there serving and that they're treated as such. Right now, I worry that they're not.
Congressman Chaffetz, thank you very much.
Thank you.